into a bowl of clear water, suddenly the convection currents operating in the clear water become visible because you see the particles of ink tracing out the previously invisible dynamics of the standing water. The mind is precisely like that, and the psychedelic is like a dye marker being dropped into this aqueous system. And then you say, oh, I see. It works like this and like this. Well, if psychedelics are catalysts for the imagination, and if history is driven by the imagination, it is driven through the fallout from the imagination, which is technology and culture. Technology and culture are the consequences, the derivatives of the ratiocination of the mind. And technology has life, biological life, but on a much faster or accelerated time frame. Technology has this weird tendency to transcend itself, to bootstrap itself. You know, if you have a cart, then it implies better wheels, better bearings, better structure, and then higher speed, more control, more feedback from the machine. It means we need gas gauges, RPM readouts, so forth and so on. Technology, strangely enough, created by a biological creature, has itself this self-transcending quality, but ever accelerating. This is the important point, because the ever accelerating accretion of technology means that history is strangely foreshortened at the future end, because it happens faster and faster. It's like a process that begins very slowly, but once started has the quality of a cascade. The rate at which falling bodies move, 32.5 feet per second. Each second accelerates to twice the rate of fall that was occurring in the previous second. Technology is like this, and we now are in a domain where if we attempt to propagate technological development forward 50 years, it becomes unmanageable as an intellectual task. We can talk about the automobile, what it might look like 50 years from now. It would float, it would go 500 miles an hour, it would be guided by your mind, so forth and so on. These kinds of ideas. Every artifact of our world will undergo that kind of transformation, and that the synergy among these transformed objects will create phenomena and situations that we can't anticipate. That's the key thing. Our inability to anticipate the synergies between our technology. I mean, the computer, LSD, spacecraft, holograms, organic superconductivity. Those are just 6 areas where the integration of those concerns will produce unimaginable consequences. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not what happened when Mary, I forget his name, tried to do with the psychedelics. He didn't push it too hard, too fast. Most people are not ready for it. So the government came and put everything in the middle, and nobody did anything about it. So they're not ready.
You mean you're referring to the 60s?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure the people weren't ready. Clearly the government wasn't ready, and probably isn't ready today. The government is not ready to embrace psychedelics, but what the government of today, the way in which today's government differs from the 60s government, is there is a spreading sense of great uncertainty. Government in the 1960s believed in what it was doing. Now, I think government exists simply to mitigate panic.
But I believe the people already, the government most times don't understand.
No, the people are ready, and the people then have to set the social agenda. A progressive society is a society where the social agenda is set by the people. And a authoritarian society, that's the only difference, is a society where the agenda is handed down from the top.
If the people already could now, with all of you ready, for example, to have a people sue for letting cigarettes, alcohol, that are in medicine, that are very harmful for people, illegal, and take what is good and make that illegal.
Well, I go back and forth about this. Sometimes I think the best strategy with the government is to ignore it. The government is only as real as you think it is. I mean, if everybody agreed it doesn't exist, it would have a hell of a time prosecuting its agenda. On the other hand, that's sort of the romantic perfectionist approach, I suppose. And the practical approach would be to try and change the government's attitude.
Well,
for example,
still wouldn't change it, but at least it would bring some awareness.
Well,
They would have to deal with it.
it might
That's the
change it.
way.
I mean, the government does follow, in some cases, its own rules. Usually when other people are watching. But for example, if you go back to this situation where the psychedelics were made illegal in 1966, somebody jumped out of a dorm window at the University of Michigan or something, and so they decided LSD was the scourge of mankind, and that they would make it illegal. In California, we're talking about now. But they said, well, as long as we're making this hallucinogen illegal, let's make all hallucinogens illegal. So psilocybin was made illegal at the same time that LSD was. Well, no medical or social evidence was ever presented that there was anything wrong with psilocybin. In other words, the ordinary process of making a compound illegal is you hold hearings and you bring in medical data. This many people died, there were this many emergency room admissions, so on. Here is the rat data, here is the profile on this. In the case of psilocybin, no medical or scientific data of any sort was ever presented to anybody. And it was made illegal in California. And when the feds came along 8 months later, decided to make all these things illegal nationwide, they said California already has a good, strong law. Let's just take the California language and drop it into the federal statute. So it would be possible, if you had $3 million to burn, to take a case to the Supreme Court and to fight the legal status of psilocybin on the grounds that no scientific evidence was ever presented there was anything wrong with it. That would at least have the effect of forcing a government-sponsored study of the human impact of psilocybin. This is now actually being done at the University of New Mexico, but it should have been done 35 years ago. It is a very disturbing situation. Yeah.
I think it kind of points up where the decisions made on rational or reasonableness are driven by fear. And
Control.
well, because loss of control is very fearful. And it's very fearful for most people to lose control. And so any situation where it touches themselves and I might lose control, they put a heart touch on it. Because my head is swimming from all we're going to do today. One of the things that the history is driven by technology. I'm wondering